I didn't expect her to touch me. Not her. Not that way. It was one of those moments that doesn't fit anywhere. Too short to explain, too vivid to forget. We were in her family's old bookstore, the kind that smelled like dust, paper, and the faint perfume of something floral that had lingered in the wood for years. My girlfriend had gone upstairs to grab her phone. I was just standing near the counter, flipping the corner of a receipt I didn't need, pretending not to notice the woman sitting a few feet away, her older sister, Lena. She was perched on a stool behind the counter, a half-open novel beside her, and a mug of coffee that had gone cold long before I walked in. The late afternoon light slanted through the tall windows, cutting across her face, tracing the edge of her cheekbone. She wasn't what I'd call beautiful in a clean, symmetrical way. She was the kind of woman you noticed a few minutes too late, after her voice had already settled into your head. When my girlfriend left the room, it got quiet in a way that made every sound too loud. The clock on the wall ticked unevenly. Somewhere in the back, a shelf creaked. Lena turned a page, but didn't read it. "You help her with the car this morning?" she asked finally. "Yeah," I said. "Just needed a jump start." She nodded, her eyes still on the page, but not moving. "You're good with your hands, aren't you?" It wasn't the question, not really. It was the way she said it. Calm, amused, like she already knew the answer. I laughed under my breath. "I guess so. I fix things." Her mouth twitched, the faintest hint of a smile. "I used to like that about people," she said softly. Then, almost as if catching herself, she added, "the ability to fix things." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, exactly. Just full. The air between us felt like it had weight. I wanted to say something back, something light, something that didn't sound like I'd noticed the sadness behind her voice. But before I could, she looked at me. Fully. There's a way some people look at you that feels like they're checking if you're lying. She looked at me that way. "You don't talk much," she said. "Neither do you." That made her laugh, low and quick, like she wasn't used to it. She shook her head, tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, and said, "Touché." I could hear my girlfriend upstairs, moving around, drawers opening. But down here, the world had gone still. Then Lena stood up, walked closer. There wasn't any reason for it. No errand, no question, no excuse. Just the quiet sound of her heels against the floorboards. When she stopped, she was close enough for me to smell her perfume, something faint, something that reminded me of rain on stone. Her hand brushed my collar. It wasn't forceful, just a small tug, almost like she was checking if I'd move. "Stay with me instead," she murmured. It wasn't a command. It wasn't even flirtation. It was something else. A challenge, maybe, or a test. And then, before I could say anything, before I could breathe, really, she stepped back. "Your shirt's crooked," she said, her voice steady again. "You should fix it before she comes back." The sound of footsteps on the stairs broke whatever that moment was. My girlfriend appeared, smiling, holding her phone, saying something about dinner. I nodded, smiled back, tried to act normal. But even as we left, I could still feel Lena's fingers at my collar. Not the pressure, just the warmth that lingered after. And when I looked back through the glass door, she was there again, sitting behind the counter, reading the same page she hadn't turned. I told myself it meant nothing, that she was just teasing. But that night, I couldn't stop replaying the way she'd said it. Quietly, almost to herself, "Stay with me instead." The next time I saw Lena, the bookstore was quieter than usual. A Wednesday evening, the kind of in-between hour when daylight still lingered but the street outside had emptied. I'd come by to help fix the front door hinge. It had started sticking again, catching against the frame every time it closed. My girlfriend was at work. Lena had texted me directly this time. "If you're free, the door needs your hands again." Nothing more. No emoji. No small talk. When I arrived, she was already there, crouched on the floor, holding a screwdriver like she meant to fix it herself, but had given up halfway. "I loosened the screws," she said, standing as I walked in. "But it's still off." Her voice had that same evenness as before, that practiced calm that made it impossible to tell if she was irritated or just tired. I took the screwdriver from her hand, brushed past her shoulder, accidentally, maybe, and knelt to check the hinge. She hovered behind me. I could feel her presence, even when she didn't speak. "You don't have to stay," I said. "I've got it." "I like to watch people fix things," she replied. "Makes me feel like it's possible." Her tone wasn't self-pitying. It was too quiet for that. Just a passing truth she hadn't meant to say out loud. I turned slightly, catching her in the reflection of the glass door. She was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, eyes down. Her hands, small, steady, the kind that probably once wrote letters instead of texts, were clutching the hem of her sweater. "You look tired," I said before I could stop myself. She gave a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Tired's just another word for still here." I didn't know what to say to that, so I focused on the hinge again, tightening the screws, pretending I hadn't heard how soft her voice had gone at the end. When the door finally swung smooth, I stood and tested it. "There," I said. "Good as new." "Nothing's ever that simple," she murmured, stepping closer. Her hand brushed the doorframe near mine. For a moment, our fingers were inches apart, close enough for me to notice how delicate the veins on the back of her hand were, how the light caught the silver band she still wore on her thumb. I glanced at her, meaning to ask something about the ring, maybe, but she spoke first. "You shouldn't always come when I call," she said quietly. "People might get the wrong idea." Her words should have sounded like a warning, but they came out like regret. "I don't mind if they do," I said, before I had time to think. That made her finally meet my eyes, really meet them. A heartbeat passed, too. Then she laughed under her breath, small and uneven, like she was scolding herself. "You're too young to say things like that," she said. "Maybe," I answered, "but I mean them." Lena exhaled slowly, stepped back, and looked toward the window, where dusk was sliding into the glass. "I know," she whispered. And when I left that night, the hinge didn't creak anymore, but something else did, quietly, somewhere between my chest and hers. It started raining before I got there. Not a gentle drizzle. Real rain, the kind that fills gutters and blurs headlights. I parked outside the bookstore and sat for a moment, watching the water slide down the windshield, thinking maybe I shouldn't go in. I'd only meant to drop off a replacement part for the old cash register. Something small, nothing that required staying. But the lights were still on. And through the window, I could see Lena moving around behind the counter, sleeves rolled up, hair pulled into a loose knot. She looked like someone trying to keep busy so she didn't have to think. When I pushed the door open, a small bell chimed. She looked up, surprised. "You're soaked," she said. "I wasn't planning on coming in," I told her, shaking the rain from my jacket. "Just brought this." I held up the register part. She smiled, softly, almost relieved. "Then I guess you'll have to stay until it stops." I wanted to tell her that wasn't how rain worked. That sometimes it doesn't stop, it just slows down. But instead, I nodded. She made tea. Black, too strong. And we sat at the counter, the storm pressing against the windows like it wanted in. The power flickered once, twice. She said, "You ever notice how quiet it gets when the lights might go out?" I hadn't. Until then. There was something suspended in the air, like both of us were waiting for something we didn't have the words for. I watched her stir her tea long after the sugar had dissolved. Her hands trembled just slightly, not from age, but from thought. "I got a call earlier," she said, not looking up. "From him. I didn't ask who. I didn't have to. What did he want?" I asked anyway, because silence felt heavier than rain. She gave a small, tired laugh. "What they always want. To make sure I haven't moved on." The tea steamed between us. Her eyes glimmered for a second before she blinked it away. "I'm sorry," I said. It sounded useless. She shook her head. "Don't be. You didn't do anything." Then she added, quieter, "That's probably why I like when you're around." The words hung there, too long, too fragile. I could have said something. I almost did. But the lights flickered again, and she reached out instinctively, her fingers brushing my wrist. It wasn't planned. Neither of us moved. The power went out completely. For a moment, the world narrowed to sound. The patter of rain, our breathing, the creak of the floorboards. I could feel her presence more than see her, the warmth of her skin, the scent of her tea. Then her phone buzzed, loud in the dark. She pulled away, fumbling for it. The glow of the screen lit her face, a name I didn't want to see reflected in her eyes. Her voice was steady when she answered. Hey, yeah, I'm here. Just closing up. She didn't look at me while she talked. When she hung up, the power came back on. The sudden light made everything too visible. I should lock up, she said quietly. Yeah, I managed. Of course. I stepped toward the door. She followed, her hand brushing my arm as she reached past to turn the lock. For half a second, she hesitated. So did I? If she had said stay, I would have. But she didn't. Only the soft click of the lock, and her voice, barely above a whisper, good night. For a few weeks, we managed not to see each other. Or maybe we just pretended not to. I stopped showing up at the bookstore, and she stopped finding reasons to text. But absence has a way of bending things. It stretches the air until it hums. When I finally went back, it wasn't for her. At least, that's what I told myself. I had a book to return, a paperback my girlfriend had borrowed months ago and forgotten. The bell above the door gave its small, betraying ring. Lena looked up from behind the counter. She was alone again. Her hair was down this time, looser, and her eyes had the quiet exhaustion of someone who hasn't been sleeping well. I thought you disappeared, she said, voice neutral, almost casual. Been busy, I answered. Work, you know. She nodded like she believed it. She didn't. The silence settled between us, and I could feel the distance we were pretending to keep. Two people standing on opposite sides of something invisible, careful not to step too close. I didn't mean to make things strange, she said after a long pause. You didn't, I said too quickly. Her lips curved faintly. You're lying. I didn't deny it. She walked around the counter, arms crossed, pacing a little. I've been trying to decide if what we're doing is wrong, she said softly. We're not doing anything, I said. That's exactly what scares me. Her voice wavered just slightly, enough to make my throat tighten. I leaned back against the shelf, trying to keep my tone steady. You think I don't know what this is? I do. I just don't know what to call it. She stopped pacing, turned to face me. Then say what it feels like. I hesitated. Like wanting to stay when I know I shouldn't. She closed her eyes for a moment, and I thought she might cry, but she didn't. When she opened them again, they were clear, sharp. Do you think this ends well? She asked. No, I said quietly. But it doesn't feel fake either. That made her laugh, soft and bitter. God, you're too young to talk like that. Maybe, I said. But you're too honest to hide it anymore. Her breath caught. She looked at me like she was about to say something, but instead she turned away, pressing her palm against the wooden counter like she needed it to stay upright. I hate that you see me, she whispered. That stopped me cold. She looked over her shoulder, half smiling, half breaking. It's easier when people don't, when they just see what they expect. I wanted to reach for her, not to touch, but to say something, anything, that would make that look leave her face. But there was nothing to say. The rain started again outside, faint this time. The sound filled the room like a second silence. She stepped closer, then stopped just shy of me, her voice barely audible. If I ask you to stay again, she said, promise me you'll say no. I swallowed hard. Why? Her eyes flickered. Regret, longing, something heavier. Because, she said, I'm not sure I could. It was late afternoon when she called. Not a text this time, a call. Her voice was quieter than usual, almost unsure. Could you stop by for a minute? She asked. It's nothing urgent. I just don't want to be alone right now. I didn't ask why. I just went. The bookstore was dim, the blinds half drawn against a heavy gray sky. The air smelled faintly of rain and old wood, like always. Lena sat at one of the reading tables, a box open in front of her. She didn't look up when I came in. I'm sorting through old things, she said, trying to decide what to keep. Inside the box were photographs, faded, curled at the edges. A few letters, yellowed, tied with string. I stood beside her, unsure if I should say anything. She picked up one of the photos. It showed a man, maybe in his 30s, standing next to a younger version of her. He was smiling, arm around her shoulders. He used to own this place with me, she said. My husband. I didn't move. She ran her thumb over the edge of the photo. He died 10 years ago. Heart failure. Out of nowhere. The words felt like they'd been waiting for too long to land. I'm sorry, I said softly. She nodded, not looking at me. I thought I'd made peace with it. I really did. But lately, I keep finding pieces of him everywhere. In the books, in the smell of the shop, even in the silence when I close up. It's like he's still here, just quieter. Her voice thinned on the last word. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat down beside her. The chair creaked between us. She exhaled, resting her elbows on the table. You remind me of him sometimes, she said. Not the way you look. He was older, steadier. But the way you listen. He used to listen like that. Something inside me shifted at that. Not pride. Not flattery. Just a strange ache I didn't recognize. Is that why you called me? I asked. She shook her head. No. I called because I wanted to stop pretending I don't enjoy having you around. Because it's selfish, and I know it. The honesty of it made the air feel heavier. I don't think it's selfish, I said quietly. It's human. Her lips curved, the faintest smile. You say things like that, and I forget I'm supposed to be wiser. For a while, we just sat there, surrounded by the evidence of her past, letters unopened, pictures fading, the echo of someone else's laughter caught in the paper. Then she reached for one of the envelopes and slid it toward me. The paper was creased, the ink slightly smeared. He wrote this the week before he died, she said. I never read it. I looked at her. Why not? Because I thought I knew what it would say. But lately, I'm not so sure. She opened it carefully, the paper trembling slightly in her hands. Her eyes scanned the first few lines, then stopped. When she looked up at me, her voice broke just once. It wasn't a goodbye, she whispered. It was a promise. And in that small, shaking silence, I realized something had shifted, not just in her, but in the space between us. Something that couldn't be taken back. We didn't talk for a few days after that. I didn't know what to say to someone who'd just opened a door like that, and maybe she didn't either. But silence doesn't erase anything. It just lets it settle deeper. It was almost closing time when I finally went back. The sky was pale and washed out, the kind of evening that forgets what color it's supposed to be. Lena was sitting by the front window with a book in her lap, though she wasn't reading. She looked up when I entered, and I saw the small relief in her eyes before she managed to hide it. I thought you might come, she said. I wasn't sure if I should. Neither was I, she admitted. I took a seat across from her, the table between us empty except for 2 untouched cups of tea. One of them was mine, still warm. I read the rest of the letter, she said quietly. He wrote about the shop, about how he wanted me to keep it open even if he didn't make it. He said he hoped I'd find someone who reminded me that life doesn't end just because something good does. She looked out the window, the city lights beginning to blur through the glass. I used to think that was cruel, asking someone to move on. And now, I asked. She hesitated, then smiled faintly. Now I think he was right. You don't move on. You move with things. You just learn how to carry them differently. The way she said it, soft, without trying to make it sound wise, made something in me loosen. I never meant to. I started, then stopped. She met my eyes. To what? To mean something, I said. Not like this. Her expression softened, and she leaned back, her fingers curling around the edge of her teacup. You didn't mean to. That's why it matters. Outside, the last of the daylight faded. Inside, the bookstore felt smaller, but warmer, like the space had accepted something we hadn't yet named. We sat there for a while, not speaking. The silence wasn't loaded anymore. It was just quiet, familiar, almost kind. Eventually, she stood, moved to the counter to turn off the sign in the window, and came back to stand beside me. I don't know what this is, she said, and I don't think we need to name it. But I do know that when you're here, the world feels a little less unfinished. I looked up at her. There was nothing to confess, nothing to ask for. Just the truth, already hanging between us. Her hand brushed mine as she reached for the teacup. She didn't pull away. Neither did I. We stayed like that, side by side, our hands barely touching, the rain beginning again against the glass. No promises, no plans, just the sound of 2 people finally breathing in sync, quietly, as if afraid to wake what they'd finally found. And for once, that silence said enough. It's been months now. The bookstore still smells the same: paper, dust, and rain. Sometimes I stop by after work, pretending to browse, though I think we both know that's not why I'm there. Things didn't turn into a love story, not in the way people mean when they say the word. There were no grand confessions, no messy breakups, no promises we couldn't keep. Just a quiet understanding. A space that opened and stayed open. Lena still runs the shop. She still drinks her coffee too late in the day, still forgets to turn on the lights until it's already dark outside. Sometimes she waves when I walk past the window. Sometimes I go in. Sometimes I don't. What I didn't expect was how much she'd changed the way I see things. Before her, I thought connection had to be loud, made of declarations, certainty, and all those movie lines people steal to make their own feelings sound bigger. But she taught me that sometimes love, or whatever this was, arrives like a hush. Something that doesn't demand to be spoken, only noticed. She taught me that you can care for someone deeply without owning any part of them. That you can stand close enough to feel the heat of their heart and still know you're not meant to stay there. There's a kind of peace in that. A kind that hurts, but gently. I think she found her peace too. She smiles differently now. Not brighter, just truer. There's less of that ache behind her eyes. When she laughs, it sounds like she's forgiven herself for something she never said out loud. Sometimes I wonder what people would think if they knew. If they'd call it wrong, or strange, or unfair. But life isn't measured by the names people give it. It's measured by the moments that made us more human. And she did that for me. She made me see. I still remember the night she told me, "You move with things, you just learn to carry them differently." I didn't understand it then, not really. But now I think I do. We carry people, even when they're not beside us. We carry what they taught us, what they revealed about who we are when no one's looking. And sometimes, when I catch myself standing in the rain outside her shop, I smile. Not because I miss her, but because I don't have to. Some connections don't fade. They just find quieter forms. So, no, this isn't a story about forbidden love. It's about what happens after the almost. About the space that lingers when two people meet at the right time for the wrong reasons and choose honesty over possession. And that, somehow, feels more real than any ending could. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?